Hello, dear friends. This is Brett Culp. Welcome to Being an Everyday Hero, Episode 5, Seek Connection Before Solution. In our lives of trying to be heroic, we are constantly interacting with people. Relationships and even casual interactions are a huge part of who we are and how we live our lives. And so today I want to talk about how we can live with each other with openness, really hearing each other's hearts and being open to connection, because the greatest and deepest growth happens not when we're by ourselves, but when we're engaged with others in community. And for that to really have an impact, we have to be willing to be open. So that's what we're going to talk about today. This podcast, Being an Everyday Hero, is for people who see everything they do, each part of their life, as an opportunity to give back, make a difference, and bring more light into the world. We are tempted sometimes to compartmentalize our life, to say we're going to do our work, we're going to do our family life, we're going to have our friendships, and then over here, we're going to do our community service and our give back. But if you are the type of person that sees everything you do, each of those parts of your life, as an opportunity to give, and you're constantly looking for opportunity to help other people in every interaction, then you are an everyday hero, and this is the place for you. So thanks for joining me today. If we have not connected yet on social media, I would love the opportunity to meet you. I'm active on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and LinkedIn, so I hope that you'll look me up and join me there. @BrettCulp is the handle on most of those social media platforms, and I'd love to engage with you there. So let me dive into this concept of seeking connection before solution. I was working on a short film a while ago, and one of the collaborators on the project didn't really have any experience or background as a storyteller or as a filmmaker, so was really new to this process. I included him on an email that had a rough draft of this short film we were looking on, and he sent me an email back saying that he really liked where we were going, but he thought that the opening needed a shot of the sky in it. It needed to include a shot of the sky. So I was completely befuddled by that email, because I just could not figure out why in the world we would include a shot of the sky at the opening. It just didn't make any sense. So I picked up the phone and I called him and said, "Hey, got your email. Can you explain this to me a little further?" And he just said, "Well, I've watched it. I think it's really good, but really what this needs is the sky." I mean, you didn't tell me anything more than what was in the email. So I said, "Okay, well, let me tell you the reasons why that really doesn't work." And I went on to kind of elaborate from a storytelling perspective and a filmmaking perspective why that was no good and why that didn't work, and why that would not be the right way to kick this film off. And he just said, "Yeah, but I just feel it really strongly. It needs a shot of the sky." and I was just kind of like, okay, well, he's not really listening to me. Let me try again. So I went again and I said almost the same thing I'd said before, which was, well, here's the filmmaking reasons. Let me kind of explain it from a different way. But, from a storytelling perspective, after I got done saying that, he just said, "Okay, well, that makes a lot of sense, but it really needs a shot of the sky." I mean, it was the same thing again. And I realized, like, okay, well, we're just repeating ourselves here. We're just going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, but something's not resonating. So I just said, okay, let's dig a little deeper here about what does this shot of the sky mean to you? What do you think this represents? What's the value of this for you? What is the emotion underneath that for you? And so we went back and forth for 10 minutes, and finally at the end of it, he said, "I feel like what this film needs is to open with something really expansive, something that has the opportunity for people to feel this open quality to it. That's what this film needs is expansiveness." And I said, that's actually a really great idea. That's really great feedback. Now, what if I propose this other way of achieving that actually works for the story we're telling here? So instead of showing the sky, what if instead we did something like this? And he said, "That's great. That's a great idea. I love that. Let's do that." And we hung up the phone and we moved on. Now, there was a part of me in that dialogue that about 5 minutes into the phone call, I was like, They don't know. This guy doesn't know what he's doing. He has never done this before. He has never been involved in this. So I just need to figure out how to resolve this as quickly as possible and get this done with and over with so that I can move on with making this film. But what actually happened over the course of our phone call was that when I was willing to be curious and dig a little deeper into what he was really trying to communicate, although he was doing it poorly because he was inexperienced at communicating about this, when I was willing to dig a little deeper and get underneath the surface of what was driving him to say this, I discovered that there was actually some pretty valuable feedback in what he had to say, that there was something pretty wise in this from his heart, even though he was an amateur at this. And that story, that experience made me realize that sometimes we are inclined in our dialogue with people, whether we are just having a very quick, casual exchange or we're involved in a much deeper, long-term, problem-solving, project-oriented relationship, that we tend to live at the surface level. We tend to live up here in action mode, in behavior mode, and, well, what are we going to do and how are we going to do it? And we forget that some of the most important stuff, some of the most important brainstorms and ideas and great insights come underneath the surface when we really pursue each other's deeper selves, our deeper hearts and perspectives about these things. And not only do we find that there's opportunity to learn about ourselves in the process, but there's opportunity to come up with better, more well-rounded solutions to the problems we're facing. Each one of us is able to perform at a higher level and give back to each other and to the world at a higher level when we have been heard, when we have been listened to, when somebody was willing to actually dig in and hear us and help us process in a more full way this very raw idea or emotional response that we had. When somebody's actually willing to listen to you and say, well, why are you feeling that way? What's that about for you? We end up learning more about ourselves and who we are. So this process of being open to each other is like a win-win everywhere. There are so many ways we win from that, and yet we often don't do it because we're so oriented just to getting to a solution as quickly as we can. So let's talk about that a little bit. It starts with listening, and listening openly. I think a key to that is curiosity, is really being interested in what the other person is saying, really believing in our hearts that there is something of value and importance and meaning in what the other person is sharing. Sometimes we click off too fast, right? Somebody starts talking about something and we listen to the first 15 words of it and we just assume we know what the rest is going to be, and so we just click it off. We're not listening anymore. You've had that happen to you, right? I've had it happen to me where I'm trying to communicate an idea that really had some complexity to it, but the other person was just mentally, emotionally shutting me down before I ever got into the depth of it. They had made an assumption about what I was going to say. They had passed judgment, drawn a conclusion, and evaluated all the reasons why it wasn't going to work and it wasn't any good and this wasn't the way we should go. And they did that without ever really digging into what was underneath it or behind it so that we could come to deeper understanding together. And that is a frustrating experience. You know that it is. So you've been there, you've been on the other side of that, so you know the value of listening. So coming to every conversation with the idea that what the person on the other side of the table shares, or the person you're interacting with, is as important as what you're going to share. And listening to what they're saying and really digging and pursuing it. So when somebody says something to me, if it's something that I agree with or disagree with, my first question is some form of why. I may not just say why, but it's some form of that. It's some form of, well, tell me what that means to you, or why did you come to that conclusion, or why do you feel that way? Or if they're telling me a story about something, which often we're communicating to each other in stories, I'll often say, well, again, what does that mean to you? Or tell me what the experience of that was like for you. When you went through that what was it like? How did it make you feel? How did it change you? And in the process of listening to people talk about that, often I'm uncovering sides of things that I have never seen before. Whenever I'm working with an organization on a film, I often say that my approach as a filmmaker is that, okay, we're going to put this idea or this organization or this person that we're focusing on with this film in the center of the room. And what I want to do is I want to talk to all the different people who are standing around it. I'm imagining them all standing or sitting in a circle around that thing. And when you talk to every single one of them, they're looking at a different side of that same thing. But what they see is different because they're seeing it from a different angle. And you can't get the full picture, the 360 of what this thing in the middle looks like until you've talked to the people that are standing around it on all the different sides. And every single one of them has a valuable addition to it. Even if the side they're seeing is somewhat mundane and not the most interesting or engaging or intriguing, they still are contributing in some way to the overall perspective and point of view of what this thing is. And when you take them all together and you're willing to admit that all of these insights have value, then you're able to see a clearer picture, which allows you to move forward in a better, more holistic, more healthy way. And that's the value of being willing to really listen and dig into these different perspectives, because that's where the insight is. Now, this process is even more important when you're trying together to make some sort of decision, because those are the places where it's really hard. I mean, so there are some times when, you've got a long list of things you have to decide, and some of them, it really could go either way. It doesn't really matter that much, and you have to quickly work through the list just to get things done, because you've got hundreds of things you have to accomplish, and if you dug deep into everyone's opinion on each one of those things, you'd never get anything done. I get all that, and there's a time for that. But there are also times when you're trying to make big, strategic, important decisions where you're trying to do things, whether it's in your work or your life or your family or in some project you're part of in your community. There's lots of different ways, lots of different times when you really need to come to the best decision, and you know that that's going to be a vital part of moving ahead. And that's where this is so important. And that's where this idea of seeking connection before you seek solution really matters, because the idea behind that is pursuing each other, pursuing what we really think and what we really believe and what our points of view are, so that we can arrive at that holistic view of what we're doing and develop a strategy and an approach to moving ahead that does that. Because here's the reason that's important. There's a couple of reasons, actually. The first reason is because it allows us to come to a better decision when we have more perspectives and points of view on the table. When we really are interested in hearing what everybody has to say, and we're not just jotting it down just so we can say we wrote it down and we heard it, but we're actually willing to emotionally, mentally engage with all those ideas and really consider whether there's value, to be intrigued by even the sometimes the silliest of ideas, to be intrigued by that, right? When you watch a murder mystery, on TV, whatever it is you're watching, particularly those ones that I love so much from the 1980s, like Matlock and Murder, She Wrote, and I love those TV shows. I don't know if you love them, but I do. Like 90% of the time in an episode, the great idea that comes from the great detective is because of some silly throwaway line that somebody else said, like they said, well, it couldn't be this. And then all of a sudden, the head smart person says, you just hit on it, da-da-da-da-da, and then the music plays and they go on to the solution, and you realize why that dumb idea actually led to something brilliant. It wasn't that the idea or what they said, it was a throwaway, it didn't have value in it, but it was the openness to it that sparked the great idea. And that is the way life is in general. It's silly and cliche on those television shows, but I love it so much. But that's the way life is. That's the way our all of our interactions are, is it's in sometimes the silliest of brainstorms that we come up with the best ideas. And so that's why being open to that is an important part of the solution. But here's the other reason, and maybe it's the bigger reason when you look at the whole scope of the things that you're doing in your life. It's important. We develop a strategy. When you go out on a mission or you're trying to accomplish something in your life, you say, here's the mission, here's what we're trying to accomplish. But whether or not you ever write it down, intrinsically part of every single mission is building community. Because if you're not building community among the people who are working on this together, you're really wasting the opportunity. Because community will last and go with you through this mission, this project, and into the next one. So whether it's the people that you're working with, in some sort of professional environment, or it's your family, or it's some sort of neighborhood community or something you're working on with people, it doesn't matter what it is. That collaboration, that group of people is going to be together potentially long after this project is over. If you think about it in terms of a marriage or a family relationship, you guys can duke it out, and maybe you get your way on what movie you're going to watch tonight. And you're like, man, we got to a good solution about that, and I got my way. But you do realize, of course, that if you fought nasty to get your own way and you didn't listen to everybody else in the room, but you got to watch the movie you wanted to watch on Netflix tonight, after that movie is over, you still have to eat dinner with those people. You still have to live with those people. You still have to do laundry with those people and clean the house with those people and do chores and decide who gets the car tonight and all of those things that are part of life. And so the process of choosing what movie you're going to watch on Netflix is not just about choosing the movie. It is also about doing it in a way that you build connectedness and openness and listening to each other. Because if you're not building open relationship and positive relationship in coming to that solution, then not only are you missing the opportunity to do something bigger, but you're also potentially creating negatives that are going to carry forward into the other things you do. So that's true of everything. That's true of every project you're working on with people or any engagement that you have with people, because the way that you treat this engagement in terms of valuing the other person and valuing their opinion carries forward into the attitude they bring about you and about all the future engagements you're going to have with them. That's why listening is important, because listening not only allows you to come up with the best solutions, but it makes people feel valuable and important in a way that builds deeper connectedness. It shows that I care about you. When I look you in the eye and really listen to you and really hear you, it's a huge, huge emotional thing for people. There are so many of us in the world that feel unheard, that feel unseen, that feel like nobody is really paying any attention or thinks that what I do or say is valuable. But in whatever environment you're working on, when you say, you know what, your opinion matters to me, it makes a difference. I care about you. And even if I don't agree with you, I care about you enough to actually listen to what you're saying. That is the essence of community and family and everything we do in relationship together, is that knowledge that as we work on something together, we're hearing each other, we are joined together in something. We're not always going to agree, and the process is sometimes going to be messy and ugly, and it's not going to fit into all the neat, nice categories we want it to, and we're not always going to get our own way. But the process of coming to that agreement together and valuing each other in the process is the opportunity for something bigger. So when we come together like that, when we're really able to walk into any kind of engagement and listen to a differing opinion and say, you know what, I'm going to listen to you with openness. I'm going to listen to you with a heart that knows that I've got some doubts about my own opinion, and I'm willing to acknowledge that. And also, I'm going to bring some intrigue, some interest in what you have to say, because there might be something underneath this that is important, that is different than what I perceive. That kind of openness not only, again, leads us to better solutions, but it's also so attractive. It also allows people to connect with you and to build relationship with you, and also to be willing to compromise with you on the things that maybe you can't come to agreement with. we come from a philosophy as a society that is one of these debate kind of philosophies, right? That we are going to bring our view, and I'm going to stand behind this podium, and you're going to bring your view, and you're going to stand behind that podium, and I'm going to stand for what I think, and you're going to stand for what you think, and we're just going to duke it out until one of us either gives up or whatever, or somebody in the audience, calls that it's over. It's like we're in a boxing match with each other. When you're in a boxing match, there's no negotiation, there's no discussion. It is just flat out pounding each other until somebody goes down for the count. And that's the way we're used to doing this. But the larger opportunity, the opportunity that leads us to better places, not just in our projects, but as human beings living together and growing together into our best selves, into the kind of people and groups and communities that can reach out and then make a positive impact in the world, that comes from being willing to look each other in the eye, to see each other, hear each other, really listen to each other, and to affirm each other's value in the process. When we're willing to bring that kind of mindset, that kind of heart, that kind of perspective to the things we do together, now we really have something amazing to give to the world. We have a consciousness and a spirit that the world needs everywhere. A spirit of openness and care and value and meaning and desire to really know each other, hear each other's stories, and work together towards something better in the future. And that's the kind of perspective that builds hope, that builds faith that we can actually grow together into something really amazing. So I hope these insights help you, not just in the practical interactions that you're going to have with the people you meet tomorrow and the day after, but as you bring that kind of mindset into your whole worldview about how you're interacting with people, caring about people, and what we're doing together. Thanks so much for spending this time with me. If this was helpful to you, I hope you'll share this podcast, this episode, with someone who you think it would help. And I would just be so honored if you'd take a minute on iTunes or wherever you found this to rate it, leave a comment, leave a like, to share it with each other. You can learn more about me and my work and about this podcast at my website, brettculp.com. That's Brett with 2 T's, brettculp.com. Thanks for joining me. Sending big hugs and love to you. Hope you have a heroic day.